Hello and welcome to Tremaine Sci-Fi. Today we are discussing the final episode of the first season of Kenobi. Now, we don't know if there's going to be any other seasons of Kenobi. There's been rumours that they want it to happen, but some of us have our doubts. We said we had Archie. We don't know what's happened to Archie. He might come in midway through. But as for now, it's just me and Jag. Say hi, Jag.
Hello, Jag.
The second I said it, I knew you were going to do that. As it was,
I didn't say hi, Jag. I said hello, Jag.
You're a bad baby.
Welcome to Tremaine Sci-Fi.
Welcome to the shit show, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so
everything's made up and the points don't matter.
So, we will finally be taking a break from well, not a break actually. We're not talking about Kenobi again for a good while because we've had the last two episodes, including this. Well, maybe ever. But next episode should be quite interesting. We've already recorded it. It's about sci-fi weapons and some of the other ones. There may be some author biographies coming up. I say biographies.
Controversial things.
Jag says some controversial things. Well, he doesn't say controversial things. He examines controversial things. Anyway, carrying on. Kenobi. And don't forget to check out our Instagram page and Facebook page because plug. Alright. Kenobi. So the final episode, we're going to have spoilers, by the way, because we don't give a fuck. Kenobi's final episode, so I'll just go over what happens briefly.
Let's do the spoiler-free version first.
No.
Good. Alright, on to the spoiler version.
Yeah, so I enjoyed it, did you?
Yeah, I did. Alright,
so we're entering spoiler zone, so if you don't want spoilers, goodbye. Thanks for listening to 2 minutes of the podcast. Okay, so
as long as they download the whole thing, it's all down metrics.
So, Jag, we saw we saw Reva finally. Well, she finally is looking to get her revenge. The episode starts off with her interrogating citizens of Tatooine, and then we obviously see her pursuing.
That was a dramatic scene.
Yeah. To be honest, I missed part of it, so I actually don't know how she got the information out of that guy.
Oh, so a person's hassling some sort of shopkeep. She walks up. It's like, I need to speak to him. It's like, yeah, well, lady, you just wait up. And she just like force shoves him off to the side, and it's like, you talk to me now. And he's like, okay, I'll tell you what you want to know. Fucking Jedi up in this shit. Paraphrase.
Yeah, so we see Reva get the information out of Owen and about Owen and Beru. Beru. So we also get a what do you call it? We also get to see Darth Vader pursuing Kenobi, and we get to see the Grand Inquisitor once again getting overruled by a hothead.
Okay, I was surprised.
What?
So we've seen how Vader reacts to people.
Yeah.
Especially when they don't do what he says, or they challenge him on something, a decision he's made. He gave Grand Inquisitor so much leeway in that conversation. Just being like, nope, you're wrong. I think I'm right because of this. Obi-Wan's so important. He's like, yes, he is. Shut up. No forced choke. You are daring to just... None of that. Just... So he respects the Grand Inquisitor?
I think he understands that the Grand Inquisitor is merely doing his job. So something characteristic about Vader and Anakin as well is his hatred of the higher-ups and his sort of, not morale, but he sort of gets along with the average soldier, especially people who are willing to fight. So, like, he wouldn't choke out a stormtrooper, because they're putting themselves in the way. But he will choke out officers because he sees them as incompetent, as just waste of space.
So he it also makes a point of he never fell for Raven's shit.
No.
Like, it was always the Grand Inquisitor,
Yeah.
the real one, because like their relationship dynamic is so different than him and Rava.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's also to make that point, but
You
it's
think
still
I did
surprising.
not see this, youngling?
Oh yeah, and then when he calls her youngling in the previous episode, and it's like, yeah, he knows who you are. Yep.
And
But we're talking about this episode.
Yeah, so we see the awesome standoff between Obi-Wan and Darth Vader, and also the battle in the Owen and Beru's house, which was pretty cool. Owen really did his best, and Beru fucking slapped her or something. I don't know what she did when she hit her when she came through the door, but fuck.
So I will say that when I was watching, I had this sort of moment where I was like, "What?" When it's like, and you know what to do, right? If they get here, you run, okay? Cool, and then locks them in a room. Okay, there was a ladder out, but watching that scene, I was like, make sure you run. Click.
Like, if she had found that ladder first,
Oh, man.
that would have been a disaster.
I mean, points for them for trying. It's a shame they can't aim for shit. He had the drop on her.
Yeah, I know. I actually yelled when that fucking first shot missed. I was like, no!
Shot, miss, then she reacts, and it's like, well, now you've lost. And doesn't he teach Luke to shoot? And he can hit the eye of a womp rat at
some sort of psychopathic
feet
thing
or something. So, like, surely he should be a good shooter.
I don't think he teaches Luke to shoot. I think he just...
I think Luke just practiced.
Yeah.
Sort of organically. Okay. I did like the whole thing with, like, it's Tusken Raiders. The neighbors have said that they're attacking. It's like, yeah, it's probably the good thing to tell your kid out of the options.
Well, we also get a
The Emperor's assassins are coming for you. Oh, fuck.
Why are they coming after me? Because your father's... no idea.
Yeah.
So we also get to see Obi-Wan versus Vader, which is an epic fight. No?
I loved lots of parts of it. Using the Force to grab things, throw at each other, all that stuff. It's like someone involved in production did that thing where you look at the ramifications of a technology or something like that and see what it would actually mean and implement it.
Right.
So I did like, like grabbing a rock and smacking him in the legs to knock him out, to flip him over to get the high ground. Like, it was good. It was good. And then burying him and being like, alright, cool. And walking away. Because I was watching that and I was like, okay, so he's using the Force to make like a bubble around him, like you should do if you're in an avalanche, get some mouth space.
Yeah.
If he's acted like, okay, maybe he can hide his presence.
No. The point of that thing is that he thinks Obi-Wan is too weak to hold off the rocks for that long. And
He could sense Obi-Wan using the Force, though, surely.
Yes, but he could sense him holding it. He couldn't sense him when he throws it all out. So he assumed, this is again why Vader fails ultimately, is he assumed that Obi-Wan would be weaker, that Obi-Wan would not be able to get out of the avalanche, that Obi-Wan would not be able to do all these things that Obi-Wan ends up doing. At least that's how I interpreted it. So, you know, the, what do you call it? I think the fight really brought home some interesting thoughts about how epic some new Vader material would be.
True.
I think also the television budget was the only downfall of that fight. Because some of the computer-generated graphics were... they were a little weird. Like, some of the Force movements are a little janky. They're not as good as I recall other Star Wars things. But that's obviously because the TV budget is different to a feature film budget. So
I thought for a TV show it was really good.
Right.
I feel like Vader would have killed him.
Well, so...
I'm going to cover you in rocks now. No. No, he wouldn't do that. He'd kill him. He wanted to burn him before because of the whole, you burned me, I will burn you back. No, he didn't. I feel like you did.
Well, also remember...
I feel like he would have, been, cover him with rocks. No, try to rip his limbs off.
Also remember how horrible it would be to die in an avalanche. You would be there for days, crushed under rock, slowly dying, and you would probably never get rescued.
I still just don't think that's how. I mean, they both have to survive and all that. It just seemed silly that he would...
I can see where you're coming from.
Leave it there.
Yeah, I can see where you're coming from. That is sort of a...
I mean, you understand the character of Vader better, and maybe you go well, it really speaks to his psychology at the moment. Just like Obi-Wan can't kill Vader, Vader can't really kill Obi-Wan directly either. He had the chance in that fire, but he was like, I'll hurt you, but I can't really finish you off.
Well, no, it's because he doesn't want Obi-Wan to have a quick death. And that's ultimate. That's
a quick death. Remove his limbs.
Ultimately, that's why Vader failed to kill him so many times. Well, fails to catch him probably again. Is Vader is not, and this is what Emperor Palpatine was talking about when he's talking to him in Vader's castle. When he's talking about, maybe your feelings for your old master are conflicting you. That is Sidious being you need to leave Obi-Wan alone. He's consuming way too much of your time, and you're clearly not going to beat him.
He could have beat him. Doesn't matter.
No. Let's keep throwing ourselves at this. Make the episode longer. I mean, that's really the main part of this episode is the Obi-Wan Darth Vader fight, because that's when we see Obi-Wan using his Force abilities more effectively than in previous battles. The previous battle, he had basically been, slapped around by Vader. And I saw a lot of people saying that it was only done because they wanted to make the female antagonist look better. I disagree with that. I don't think that was in their thinking. I think it was more the idea that Kenobi couldn't be at full power when he was first introduced.
Hmm.
Because otherwise it'd be a boring series if you just watched Obi-Wan going around owning people for the that wouldn't be interesting. There would be no narrative. There would just be Obi-Wan owning people. It'd be a great power fantasy.
I mean, that's the thing, yeah. If we have how strong he was, what were the movies that this takes place between?
Episode 3 and episode 4.
3 and 4, okay. We have how strong he was in 3. We have how strong he was in 4. And if he just was the strength that would fit between those movies, like, you know, in a lateral sense, or in a linear sense, yeah, he'd just be out there like, oh no, here comes Reva. Haha, Reva's dead. Oh no, here comes the Grand Inquisitor. Haha, I yeeted him into space. Yeah. And having the episode 4, the movie, means that they couldn't do the standard power creep thing of, well, he gets stronger, everyone else gets stronger, everyone's stronger.
So...
Which is usually a garbage way of doing it anyway.
So, I think what
Not saying Dragon Ball Z's not good, but Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan 2? Are there two Super Saiyan God, Super Saiyan 2?
I haven't watched it.
Like, nah, man.
No, so... I
like Dragon Ball.
I don't think they've really had an agenda when making this. At least I didn't feel that. I didn't get that impression. I think there has been agendas in the past for Disney Star Wars. I think definitely the movies, the sequels had agendas and were also very were a lot more in that line, but I also feel like people are now just hating it for the sake of hating Disney Star Wars, or possibly the prequels. But also, it also lends itself to the fact that not everyone likes what they think they would like. You know, some people say, "Oh, I wanted episode 7, 8, and 9." Maybe you didn't want that. You know,
they wanted it the way they wanted it, though.
Yeah, but even then they wouldn't have liked it. Because you can't recapture... You can't recapture what you had when you were younger. It's different. You're cynical now. You're...
Try.
You're going to try ketamine again.
I guess, I feel like agenda's like a loaded term. Like, I know it's not supposed to be like inherently negative, but you can't help but hear it and think of it in a negative sense,
right?
Like a secret agenda or that sort of thing. So, like, I would say that there were intentions.
Right. Yeah, that's a better word for it. Yeah.
And I don't think that the whole like, there was some representation. There was a strong, dark-skinned woman. I don't think it was like tokenism or, I'm not a particularly woke person as such, but I don't think it was like, wokeness the way people criticize things for being woke. Like, it was fine.
Yeah, see, again, and I'm the same way. I think obviously this podcast reflects more of our presentable side, but it's true. Jag and I don't in person act that way. We don't. We sometimes say things that are offensive. We often say things that are offensive, but we sort of, even I had to say, it's really not that. It's really not them being
there is some bad tokenism out there. There is some
I would say,
awful, like,
yeah,
non-representation, like, just, but
'Cause-
this is just fine.
yeah. We have to remember that tokenism is also is also bad for the minorities that are also getting represented in it.
It's like demeaning.
It's demeaning. It doesn't help.
Appropriation.
It's not actually useful in the woke sense. It's really what white people want. Really. It's not really what minority groups want. They want proper representation, proper acting, being able to act properly and things like that. They don't want to have to, okay, I'm black, but I have to act white. Or I'm a woman, but I have to act masculine. Or I have to act feminine. They don't want that. They want to be able to be themselves. And I can say that as a minority. So, there is...
When it comes to intentions, I think there was things such as, I've said representation too many times, so we'll try to change that a little. Like diversity and like a reasonable reflection on current situations.
Well, also, I
think that was something that they wanted and did, and I think it was fine.
Well, also, so they're drawing comparisons to Rey in the movies. Rey, arguably, it doesn't make any sense why she was that powerful. We get that in the end that she's a Palpatine.
I preferred Raver, yeah.
Yeah, like Raver actually is an Inquisitor. She was a Jedi. She was
a youngling to start with. She did go through some training.
She went through training as a Jedi, and then she also went through training as an Inquisitor. She has
that whole revenge thing.
She's fallen to the dark side, which is why she's so powerful in the immediate sense. So we get really a story with her.
She's good.
We get the start of it where she's driven by revenge while she's desperate for power, desperate for all this thing. And at the end we have her redemption. She actually is sort of like Vader in a way. She starts off as a hothead with no direction, no sort of thinking, mercilessly. She cuts off the hand of an old woman. She's willing to torture a child. She is completely, like we think, irredeemable. But then we see her change as she goes through these different events. We learn things about her. We learn about her past. We learn about her. And we get a better picture.
So you mentioned her redemption. Because we talked about the attack. I wasn't expecting the redemption.
No. I was expecting her to bring down the saber on Luke and Obi-Wan to ignite his lightsaber and block it.
I was thinking maybe she gets
shot by Owen or like Beru or something.
Like shot in the eye, the back of her head just taken off. That sort of thing.
Yeah,
I hadn't figured out by who. I didn't decide. Like maybe did Owen have a friend who could actually get there in time? Like, is there going to be like a community?
Yeah,
thing? Because there's a statement to be made there about communities protecting themselves.
Right. Yeah.
Sort of Black Lives Matter sort of thing in a way. No, a parallel, I should say.
Yeah, a parallel, and it also would have given her
stand up to the Inquisitors on a personal level, like, ooh, that kind of sets up some fun things as well. And then no,
she just doesn't do it. She becomes a better. She falls back into the light.
She saw herself, yeah.
Yeah, she saw what she was doing and realized she was becoming Darth Vader.
And she's only alive because of how much she hates Darth Vader. Becoming him would destroy her. I mean, she even asks that question essentially: "Have I become him?" And Kenobi's like, "No, what?
You made the choice." Well, yeah, and that's actually a very powerful statement to make about that is made often in psychology. Is you often have a choice in, and I say often because there are some instances where choice is a bit of an illusion, but if you choose to do things in a moral or perceptively moral manner, that's a choice, and that is an active thing you can do. So there's things like, for example, when they talk about drinking in families, they say, oh, well, my father was an alcoholic, so I have to become an alcoholic. You can choose not to become an alcoholic.
Yeah, you have a predilection.
Now, I'm not saying it's easy.
You are being pushed in a direction.
Yeah, you can choose to go against it. And that's not to say it's easy. That's not to say it's simple as a choice. It's basically saying you have some agency. Yeah, you have some agency to change what you want. And that is an important statement to make. And that's sort of what I'm seeing in this, is a reflection of Reva not becoming Darth Vader, though she could have very easily.
And I guess it reinforces that Anakin also could have chosen not to
kill all those children. Yeah, it reflects that
sometimes you gotta kill some children.
Well, it reflects how dangerous the dark side is. That you really don't have anyone. Because, Anakin fell to the dark side because he wanted to save Padme. He ultimately ends up killing Padme.
No, that's because, the dark side inherently twists and subverts and, pivots all things good. The road to hell is paved with good intentions.
Yeah. And that's what George Lucas...
dark side... And there's a religious metaphor there, that the devil will always do the same thing, essentially.
Yeah, and that's what essentially Lucas talks about with when Anakin falls, is he made a deal with the devil and got burnt. Which, two things are literal there. He essentially... I don't think it's... Some people say it's a coincidence that Obi-Wan looks like Jesus in Episode 2. I don't actually think it is. Lucas is incredibly religious, especially if you look at how he's written a lot of his characters. They're very Buddhist, they're very, to a degree, Christian as well. Well, the idealistic Christians and idealistic Buddhists. But he sort of writes them in a way that makes them more universal. And that's what I think.
That's what Sci-Fi does.
Yeah, that's what Sci-Fi ultimately wants. Is people can play. I think George R. R. Martin,
take a religious concept and then expand it out into a more general human
monomyth. Yeah. So we talked about Isaac Asimov. We talk about Isaac. We're going to talk about Isaac Asimov at some point in the future, but we also talked about Doc Smith. We're going to talk about Heinlein as well. And so we talk about a lot of these white, older men, people writing sci-fi. And, George R. R. Martin was confronted with this on one of his interviews about, why does representation seem to be so difficult in fiction? And he essentially pointed it out himself, that it's hard to write good, strong, ethnic characters when your entire industry is written by old white men. And that's essentially what needs to sort of happen.
And that is something we also heard from our 3 interviews in some form or another.
Yeah.
Morgan Quaid, Jenny Dewis. Tremaine, you're supposed to fill in the third
James
one.
Knoll.
Thank you, James Knoll. All 3 of them did talk about... No, it's actually just been months, and I'm just not good at this. They all spoke on the same thing, which is they all wrote what they knew, and their works were good. And it's hard to go out of that and still make something good. And people do, and I'm sure they could. With effort. It would take anyone effort. Okay. So, like, the whole thing of representation, I believe what we settled on was basically you have to go and find people in those groups and, like, talk to them and get, learn from them how to do representation well. The problem being then that even then, you're representing, you may be doing good representation of, I don't know, Hispanic people who you're friends with.
Yeah.
But then there's still all the rest of them.
But so yeah, as I was saying before, we had a bit of an interruption there. So welcome, Archie. So what we see with this representation in fiction is it can be quite difficult to do that effectively. But Archie, so you're a fellow Star Wars fan, so you're going to be able to delve into this a bit better than Jag. No offense, Jag, but what did you think of the Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight?
The first one, it showed the first one. I think it was episode 3. It showed how Obi-Wan had just completely severed himself from the Force, and it was just showing how he struggled to reform that connection, even when it meant his life. And then by episode 6, he had pretty much fully established his connection, and it was that when he was buried alive that final time, and he had to think about his kind of purpose of being there and his care and affection for both Leia and Luke. That was like the final thing that was able to fully reestablish his connection to the Force, and that's when he was able to finally like overpower Vader again.
Right, yeah. And
reintegrated and reactualized himself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Jag was pointing out that it was not a good idea for Vader to try to kill Obi-Wan by drowning him in rocks. Now, I said
saying that he didn't try to kill him.
Oh yeah, he didn't try to kill him. I was saying more. This is what Vader wanted, because he wanted Obi-Wan for his death to be long and drawn out. Now, I don't think it was the best way it could have happened, but I do think that is how Vader would think. Is that okay? Obi-Wan is not strong enough with the Force to push those rocks off. I'm going to let him get crushed slowly by these rocks as he fails with the Force. Then he's going to slowly starve, dehydrate, and slowly die in a hole. And it's going to be all because of me.
Yeah, I mean, well, Obi-Wan let Anakin get burned alive, and so he wanted revenge on Obi-Wan in the best way possible, and so he would have wanted to create the most painful death, but also a death that would be pretty much almost assured that he would die, which is why even when he's like covered, you still see he throws like 3 huge chunks of rock. He like still continues to throw shit on top, and you also see that the rocks, he's not just like moving above and dropping it. He's physically like pushing them down as well.
Yeah.
Like they don't fall at natural speeds. They're physically pushed down and almost it looks like forced to be there. And so he's kind of yeah.
So Jack, does that make a bit more sense, or do you think there's still some?
I mean, I can see it that way, and I can accept it that way. I just
don't.
He had spent so long thinking about or trying to catch him. I feel like he should have. If I had that sort of hatred, I was actively going to get someone. and I had a lightsaber and the technology, like, surely I'd lop his limbs off, make him a human McNugget, and chuck him in some sort of... You know in Dune how they've got the nerve induction box? Surely.
Oh no.
Like, he hates him.
Jesus Christ.
You can do so much worse. I mean, we can do so much worse.
Yeah.
You know, scaphism is an incredibly old torture method.
What's that?
Yeah, I have no idea what the fuck you're talking about.
Are you not familiar with scaphism?
No.
Not personally, no.
It may be scaphism. I'm not sure.
Either way.
So, trigger warning for just torture, I guess.
Torture.
Ancient Persian method of execution. Force feed someone a lot of milk and honey. Nail them to the bottom of a canoe and shove the canoe out into a swamp.
Oh.
Takes days for them to die as too much milk and honey messes up your digestive system. That whole situation will bring the bugs in, which start eating you while you're still alive.
You can't fight them off. Yeah.
You can't fight them off because you're basically crucified, lying down on your back.
And of course, all the alligators in the swamp will also eat you.
Yeah, but they would be too quick, so they probably don't have alligators. But this is
And
the
also,
point.
lying in your own waste, your skin, your flesh starts to rot
Rot, yeah.
itself.
So, I mean, yeah, what Jake's saying essentially is what I think a lot of older fans probably were expecting.
Well, we knew he wasn't gonna catch him, but like he has to do something.
Well, I'm not saying expecting. I meant more. I think some people thought Obi-Wan was going to get tortured and then have to embrace part of the dark side or fight off which he does. He fights off the urge to fall to the dark side, but he. How do I put this? So I think again this is something to do with our desensitization of violence.
Oh yeah,
it's part of that. I think that's why, because I also didn't feel that even though I said that getting crushed to death would be a horrible death, true, but also being burnt alive and then surviving is also worse. So. Yeah. I will admit that it's not the most brutal way to die, but I also think we have to remember that Star Wars is not entirely just brutality. Because the closest thing we've gotten to total brutality is definitely Anakin's transformation.
Oh yeah. I just. Yeah,
and
I accept what happened. As I said, it was a good episode.
Yeah,
I just felt like Vader had been planning and planning and planning. Why would he do less than he suffered?
Now, Archie, we talked about that comment that you and I were looking at before, that Reva was a Mary Sue. Now, I disagree with
Mary Sue.
Huh?
Which part? Sorry. What do you mean by Mary Sue? Sorry?
Mary Sue is like, so you know how Rey could just do things without any explanation.
Yeah.
That's essentially.
She has whatever powers she needs to have at the time.
Right.
It's not consistent.
Rey could somehow summon Force lightning to destroy a ship without even thinking about it. That sort of is the idea of a Mary Sue, but. So Jake and I were essentially saying Reva is not like that in the slightest. Because she's a Jedi youngling at the start, and then she's also a Sith assassin, or Sith Inquisitor, trained very harshly, as I think it is in canon.
Her powers and mentality are consistent with her background.
Yeah. What do you think, Archie?
Well, yeah, in the Jedi younglings scenes, just by like looking at the actor who plays the young Reva, it looks like she's probably about 10 to
10?
15, that kind of range. So like early teens or just before becoming a teenager. So she's had a good couple years of Jedi training, and so she'll have kind of the basic
Base force,
yeah,
base
before
lightsaber combat, yeah.
yeah, before even starting to train as an Inquisitor. And then as an Inquisitor, you see this in the first couple of episodes with how the first Inquisitor talks to her. She's constantly belittled, she's tortured, she's kind of just like
From the gutter.
yeah. She's
we can put
reminded
you
that
back.
yeah, she's just reminded that she's one of the most hated and worst Inquisitors there is, which just makes her hatred of Vader and her need for revenge and therefore her power in the dark side also grow.
Yep.
And then eventually to the point in episode 4 where she thinks she has the power to confront Vader and he doesn't even need to draw a lightsaber to beat her.
He
And
takes hers, throws them at her, takes
Yeah.
them back. Yeah, we've spoken on this in the last episode.
To be fair, he could have
It's
snapped her
rough.
neck instantly. like,
yeah, no, like he
Like
could
those
have just
children.
overpowered her
like the children.
immediately,
Yeah.
and yet he still disarmed her, gave her a fighting chance to only disarm her again.
And then just stab her and leave her to die. And this is this is what I messaged Archie the second I saw Vader being left to die. Was essentially, stop leaving people to die!
Yeah, we know that you can sustain yourself.
like,
Gosh.
Obi-Wan must...
Dark side users.
Especially the guy who'd already done it.
Obi-Wan... this is what I saw a comment in the Maul versus Obi-Wan in the final battle between them and Rebels. Is, Obi-Wan stabbed him a few more times to make sure. It's kind of...
Off camera, Obi-Wan's just like slashing the corpse like you're not coming back this time.
Not this time. Head off, arms off, legs off, stab in the heart a few times. Yeah, no,
We will bury each body parts hundreds of meters apart.
And then I'm setting you on fire.
Coming back.
We'll cremate your heart and brain separately, just in case. I don't want you Wolverining this shit. So, the main reason I wanted Archie here, the scene where Obi-Wan meets up again with Leia and her parents. Because I'm going to call them her parents. They are.
Yeah, they're really her parents.
Yeah. He walks up to the parents, gives the father a great big hug, turns to the mother, gives her a firm handshake. How do you feel about that? Hugs for the men, firm handshakes for the ladies?
Well, I mean, I think he just had a closer relationship with Bail Organa because he was like he knew him from the prequels and stuff. So I think it was more. I don't really know you, and so you get a handshake, a hearty handshake, and then I've known you for like the last 15 years of my life or something. So.
It's the same. It does fit the characters
Yeah.
and their relationships. So
Yeah.
there are these little characterizations like that which work.
Mm.
But they're for people who either watched the movies more recently or just more
saw the multitude of TV
more.
shows, yeah.
Yeah.
Because Bail Organa is a close ally of Obi-Wan. Because Obi-Wan and the Jedi wanted an end to the war, which he also and Padme wanted.
It is even brought up in, I'm pretty sure it's the first episode of Kenobi, where, it's those two who are talking and sorting it out. Like, all right, well, you guys have the girl, but he's talking to, you just said Bail.
Just a random other point on the. Sorry for interrupting, but just a random other point on on Kenobi is what I was really surprised is that how well they were able to keep the actual plot of the show so hidden in marketing. Like,
yeah, actually, that's a good point. Yeah,
like in all of the marketing of the show, or at least all of the ones I saw, I don't think I saw everything, but like the whole, even like I think young Leia, just that character was unknown. And she was literally just like one of the second most prominent characters. Like in all of the major trailers and stuff, it just focused mostly on Tatooine, Uncle Owen, Kenobi,
Yeah.
Reva, and a little bit of the other Inquisitors, and that was it.
Yeah, I can see that. That's certainly a good point. Yeah. Well, another thing that I wanted to talk about with Archie, because I think Jag needs a quick bathroom break, is what you thought of Reva not killing. Well, obviously Luke wasn't going to die, obviously, but we didn't know how he was not going to die. Was it going to be she would bring down the lightsaber and Obi-Wan's would ignite next to hers and it would be like a final duel between the two where they're finally on an even playing field because Obi-Wan's now super powerful and she has become so weak, and then it's going to be a reverse of what happened in the first fight. But instead we get what Jag and I were agreed on was quite an interesting twist, which is hold on. She's actually she's actually redeemed herself. She's made a conscious choice not to be that way. So what did you think of it? Did you expect it? Because Jag didn't expect it to be her to be redeemed.
I didn't expect it. I also didn't expect like Obi-Wan to show up before she was
Right. So did you expect like Owen or Burrow to shoot her in the back or something?
Well, I was expecting them to shoot her in the back, mostly because the guns they had like huge scopes on the top that went like down halfway the barrel. So I was like, in my mind, I'm kind of like, could you not just? It's an open desert. Could you not? It's not. She's focused on Luke. Could you not just pop? Like, but yeah, no, I wasn't expecting it, and I think it adds its character development for her, and it really leaves her story much more open-ended.
And it also is a very good redemption arc.
Yeah.
Like it's almost on par with Darth Vader's arc, I would say, for a TV show. Because we see Anakin fall to the dark, and then we see he's only redeemed by his son, but who sees the good in him. But we see in this, Reva actually, she's fallen to the dark side because out of necessity, which a lot of people, if you make the dark side about drinking or doing bad things, that happens. Joining like a gang, for example, that happens out of necessity. And then we see
need for survival kind of thing.
Yeah, and then we see her redemption, someone getting themselves out of that world, doing it themselves, doing it by their own willpower, and then not reaping the rewards immediately, but receiving approval from a figure in their past. And so Obi-Wan's saying, when she says, did I become like him? And he goes, no, you made a choice not to be.
Yeah.
I thought it was a very powerful moment.
Yeah, and I think for future Reva stories, it's also a very good move story-wise, because it leaves her story open to not just constantly be an Inquisitor.
Right.
It leaves her story to open to be an ex-Inquisitor who became a Jedi, or just someone who joins the Rebel Alliance, or kind of an Ahsoka type, like a Grey Jedi kind of thing. Where,
Do you see her redemption at the end as being a statement on the trauma cycle, like generational trauma, essentially? Where it's like, I was hurt, I go on and hurt. I don't have to.
I mean, now that you've brought it up, yes, I can see it. I didn't initially think of it that way, but I thought it more... How do I put this? I thought it more of Reva, I guess, not wanting to become the person she hates, not wanting to become the enemy in her eyes.
Right. So sort of that, I can see what Jag's saying, I can also see what you're saying. So it's sort of I don't want to be like the man who put me here, but but there's also the idea of Vader being a sort of, not father figure, but an abusive father figure. And then she wants to avoid becoming the abusive father figure, which is also a good point. But so I think I really enjoyed it. I think we all sort of enjoyed it on our own levels. But something I have been disappointed with is I didn't think, to be honest with you, I didn't think the series would do well. I thought Obi-Wan's story in the desert, the way I saw it, how it would unfold, would just be a disaster. But I was pleasantly surprised. The only thing I have that was not pointed out to me, something I realized, was partly, and this was a theory I had that I didn't voice in the last episode. When Vader says to Obi-Wan, "When I left you, I was but the learner. Now I am the master." To me, each time, now that we've had three fights, or three final fights, each time being a final fight, but we see Obi-Wan leaving, not him leaving. And also, to me, that implies more Obi-Wan that Vader left him. And so I wondered if there was going to be a scene where Vader and Obi-Wan had to fight together. That was something I thought about and thought that was so ridiculous, there's no way it was going to happen. Because it is really ridiculous, but it would be also a really cool thing to happen.
You'd love it. Yeah, I know you would.
Yeah, that would be one of those scenes where it would be a really cool concept, but just the hardest thing to pull off well. Like it.
You know how Maul somehow fought with Ahsoka in Rebels? Like, something like that. It's like, what? What is happening? Like, if you started on Rebels, or you had watched all the movies, and then you watched Rebels, one, you'd be like, who the hell's Ahsoka? Two, how the fuck did Maul survive that? Four, that being chopped in half and falling down a shaft. Three, where the fuck did Anakin... Where the fuck did when the fuck did Anakin have an apprentice? And so, a lot of Star Wars now is sort of fucking caught itself in different weaves of different shows. So, originally there was just the 6 movies. Now there's 9 movies, like mainline movies, and then there's also, I think, 3 or 4 others. Now there's multiple TV shows. So there's a lot of things that come out of left field that you're not really expecting because it just happens. And that's what I was expecting with... not expecting, I was theorizing about Vader. It was like, what if there was something greater than the two of them that they had to face off with, and then Vader has a chance at redemption only for him to squander it again and leave Obi-Wan sort of disappointed with him. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like pleading.
That would have been cool, but I think the problem is Vader is often the bigger thing people have to team up against.
Yeah. I do understand why it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But it's just something I'm like, it wouldn't...
Yeah. What would that big bad be? Like a dragon?
Space
Sidious, no.
Wielding dragon with Sidious riding it.
General Grievous with Sidious's brain in it.
Oh, Jesus
Also,
Christ.
they did that too recently with Rey and
Kylo.
Solo. Yeah,
Kylo,
Kylo.
yeah. Well, actually, his name's Ben Solo, but or Ben Swallow. No, so, also Archie. I should mention this because it's a little funny anecdote in behind the scenes. Is Archie and I are currently playing through the Skywalker saga, and we're desperately trying to unlock the shirtless Kylo Ren. Archie and I have been disappointed multiple times by
Every
not.
time we see him in a cutscene, we go to the character buy screen to see if we've unlocked him yet.
I just
Now-
wanna.
Regarding episode 6 here,
Yeah.
we spoke before about how a lot of this season seems to be about maybe not necessarily retconning, because they don't really change established facts, but going back and explaining things that were these loose threads, yeah?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you'll recall, I assume, because we just watched it quite recently,
Last night.
Um,
Yeah.
Vader saying, you didn't kill Anakin Skywalker. I did. Is that just a way for the whole, Vader killed your father thing? Because I felt that didn't need explanation. I thought it was fine, that lie, because he's a young boy and that would have done psychological harm to be told your father turned evil.
Well, also.
And it was also already kind of true.
Well, also, so I will talk about that, but also Luke finding that out would have made him maybe think, oh, should I go to the dark side a bit more before he had learnt the dangers of the dark
My
side.
dad went dark? Maybe there's something to it.
No, so maybe I can meet my father this way. So what I would also say is it's not that purpose. That's not the purpose of that. To me, the purpose of that is because Obi-Wan needs to learn that he can't change Vader back. And that's why when Obi-Wan is talking with Luke, he never says, try to redeem your father. There's good in your father. He never says that because he thinks now there's no way he can get Anakin back. And that's ultimately why Luke becomes such a great character, because Luke sees the good in one of the most evil men in the galaxy. Sure, he didn't see it in Palpatine, but no one tried to say Palpatine. Everyone's like, "Ah, fuck the old man, he's fine." Throw him down the shaft.
I think ultimately that line was more about Obi-Wan confronting his grief and him placing the blame on himself over Anakin's turning.
Yeah.
When it was all Sidious in the background kind of thing. And I think it was to kind of
and this is something
Obi-Wan in a position.
Yeah, this is something we also touched on in the last episode, is this idea that Obi-Wan was not best master for, and that obviously Qui-Gon was meant to be his master if things were going to go well. But Jag and I also talked about this. Obi-Wan was actually a really good master for Anakin.
He stepped up. He just didn't have necessarily the actual skills and practice and experience. But in terms of personality, he went, "Yep, I'll do it. I'll be the good dad. Didn't realize I was going to have a kid, but I'll be a dad."
Yeah, I think, and Obi-Wan kind of was a direct opposite to Anakin's fighting style. Obi-Wan was more about defensive.
Yeah.
Well, Anakin was offensive. Which,
although in their combat in that episode,
yes, Obi-Wan pushes him. Yes, I saw that.
Is a lot more aggressive in that combat. He's constantly
I think that needed to happen because Vader's not going to get tired.
Yeah.
Vader has electronic legs, arms, and a breathing apparatus on his suit. He is not going down because of fatigue.
I was so shocked when he actually got those hits in on Vader. I was like, is it not going to be Vader? What?
It's just a guy in a cosplay, please stop.
It's Kylo.
I honestly thought it was possible that, like, when he slashed through that helmet, it was going to be someone else's face.
Yeah. No, I'm just so happy someone finally went for the very obvious breathing operator on his
Apparatus,
chest.
yeah. Like, yeah, that, like, so someone's finally like, hey, wait a minute, if I push them, like, it's sort of like fighting someone who's in a wheelchair, and instead of trying to push them out of the wheelchair, just sort of going around it. And so someone finally went, hey, wait a minute. Hey, I win!
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's now in Legends, but it was at least the case at one point. Vader has to spend, like, some of his focus and force power on preventing people touching those buttons.
Right, yes.
Because one of them is a hard reset.
Which is sort of a bad idea to have as a button.
It's literally a giant self-destruct button on the front of his suit.
The reasoning I heard was that it was done on purpose that he could never outpower Sidious.
Right. Which makes sense. Sidious sort of, once Vader becomes
I have
Vader.
your remote control.
He's holding your thermal detonator!
There's one big button here and it says off.
Well, actually, so there's actually a fun series I want to talk about, which is a online series where they do, like, mashups between, like, villain fights. And they did Vader versus Batman.
Yeah.
They did
Goku versus Superman.
Oh, yeah.
They did Vader versus Batman.
Screw Attack?
Yeah, something like that. And
there's also places like Death Battle.
yes,
Really cool versions of
so Vader, basically what happens, right, is Batman has like a EMP thing, and Vader takes it off him thinking it's a gun, and then he presses a button and it deactivates Vader's suit, and I thought that was really cool. And then he starts breathing and he goes, "The Force will sustain me long enough to see your demise," and I'm like, "Oh fuck!" And then then Batman goes, "Oh yeah, better focus on you than me," and then he starts fighting again.
So I've found it is definitely expanded universe.
Okay.
There was the novel Dark Lord: The Rise of Darth Vader, which explains how he poops, among other things.
Oh,
and then there's
finally my questions are answered.
Darth Vader, a 3D reconstruction log, which goes over what all the buttons do.
Oh, fuck, that would be the most boring book in the world.
The big red button is the manual override switch, which basically turns off the limiters, so he can overexert if he wants to. And the big blue one puts it back to normal. The rightmost red button resets all of the life support, including heart.
Oh.
So he would be fully disabled. The limbs wouldn't work. His heart, his lungs, all of that's just restarting. So push that one and he will collapse. And you've got a few minutes as he reboots to just stab him.
Flash away.
So yes, he has to protect that above even his own limbs.
So also, what we get with that, as and Archie pointed this out to me, is we get a sort of parallel between Maul and the Kenobi scream. We get Obi-Wan!
I like that.
Oh, and fun fact, the Jedi that actually almost defeated Vader by pressing one of those buttons is called Tremaine.
What?
Oh, the truth
Antinous
revealed.
Spelt differently, but it is Antinous Tremaine, who managed to push a button
Do you know
that
what's
turned off his breathing.
Do you know what's annoying about this?
Yeah.
The episode we recorded the day before, about Doc Smith, that's coming.
Yeah.
That's coming out
And the
next
editor
week.
was called Tremaine.
The editor was called Tremaine, and it was spelled the exact same way. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Previously, I had no idea if anyone, like, when I type, you know how everyone types in their name at school, like the first time they get Google or something, and they like look up their name, just like, oh, am I, let's see how famous I am, or something.
About me?
Or like, how famous am I, or something. And there'll be, there's the kid called John who's like, oh yeah, I'm a politician, I'm a football player, whatever. And then the guy named Kent who's like, oh yeah, I've got a city named after me or whatever. And then there's just me sitting there like Lady Tremaine from Cinderella. And I'm like, fuck this, fuck you. But there's an editor, there's a Jedi now? What the fuck?
Fun fact, if you type in my full name with my middle name included, the first row of pictures are just gravestones.
I'm trying to tell you something.
That was always a classic back in
So
school.
I want to now hear. I hope you haven't covered this already when I blacked out for a minute earlier. But can you guys just briefly fight over the whole Qui Ghost Jinn thing at the end there?
What about
did you like that he was there?
Yeah.
Yeah, I liked that
You
he
liked
was
it?
there because it kind of explains how Obi-Wan learns
Becomes
the
a first
ability.
Force Ghost.
Because all he gets from Yoda really is, hey, here's this cool new the technique, go learn it. And it's just like, okay, thanks, you fucking frog.
Yeah,
It's like-
frog.
And what
So, I
about
think-
with what Qui-Gon said? Like,
Yes.
I was always here. You just didn't realize.
Yeah, so Jag, I have to say that was not for the audience. It was definitely for Obi-Wan because it was saying, Obi-Wan, you have overcome another trial. So a big thing about the Jedi is overcoming trial. So there's the first trial you get to become a knight, then the trial to become a master, and there's all sorts of trials where you basically get put to the test of your mental, physical, and force abilities. And this was a test. It was a test to see, could Obi-Wan finally overcome the fact that he had failed his... Essentially...
So what you're telling me is a dead guy just gave him a promotion.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, the way I saw it was him saying, you've managed to overcome your guilt around Anakin.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was kind of tethering his connection between him and the dark side, and now that that's cut, he's able to fully embrace the
light,
Jedi
yeah.
code and
And
the light.
so also what I loved is the parallels, and we will wrap up soon because we're running 10 minutes over. What I did love was the parallels of different phrases. So like when he says, then my friend is truly dead, the parallel between Luke saying, then my father is truly dead. Or when he goes to Luke and just says, hello there! And it's just like, oh, he said the thing! He said the thing!
He also
Oh,
said, when they met up on the moon to fight, he also said, I will do what I must.
Yes.
Well, if we're close to wrapping up, I suppose I've got one last thing,
Yeah.
which is, what are they going to do? Season 2? A little Darth Vader series? A Raver series? What do you expect?
I don't think
What do you?
I don't think Raver was well enough received, even though she definitely deserved it by the fans to warrant a TV series. But I would say there's possibly going to be a season 2. I have no clue whatsoever what they're going to do in it.
Yeah,
But I wouldn't reject it immediately. I would watch it. I don't expect it to be as good as season 1, but I could be completely wrong. I'm not absolute.
Cast in interviews have said they would be fully keen for a season 2, and they would be completely on board. I just think they would struggle
To write a story.
Story where Obi-Wan still keeps his task of staying on this planet and watching over this boy, and not.
See, I wonder if
Years.
there is actually some comic series that touch on what Obi-Wan did in the thing, and there's actually a really interesting story about Tusken Raiders who attack the farm, Luke's farm, Owen's farm, and steal something that they need to survive. And Obi-Wan shows up at the Tusken camp and essentially nearly falls to the dark side where he kills the entire lot, the women, the children, not just the men, but the women and children too. But instead, he starts cutting off parts of their clothing to reveal their skin, which is something that frightens Tusk. Yeah, it's a taboo thing. And so when that happens, they run away, and he gets to save the day. And so I wonder if they could borrow from some of those comics. I don't think they will, because they didn't do it the way I thought they would do it with the books in the sequel trilogy, but it would be an interesting concept. Anyway, final thing. Don't forget to check out our Instagram and Facebook page. And thank you, Archie, for joining us, even if it was midway through.
Not my fault.
It's not my fault. So, yeah, again, thank you for listening for this long. If you have. If you haven't, fuck you. And good day. Bye.